We move on talking about constructing a circle graph. And what we have here on our grid will be the numbers relative to the $600 in profits, the percents for each of those numbers, as well as the relative number of degrees from the circle. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at the profits directly to the degrees. We will reference the percent, but really in a sense, as we move towards the symbolism, we want to make it as efficient as possible. So now let's look at the three numbers that we've been looking at. We've been looking at $150 in profits, $180 in profits, and $270 in profits. And so the question is, how many degrees do I need to show these three numbers on my circle graph? Well, let's look at the 150. 150 is in the same relative position to 600 as some number of degrees, and we'll just say n, is to 360 degrees in the circle. Now we know the answer is going to be 90. But if we did not have the grid, we would have to then set up this proportion. And when we solve this proportion, we will find that n is equal to 90 degrees. And so we draw 90 degrees for our angle. So there is our angle of 90 degrees that solved our proportion, and that's relative to $150 of the profits. Now let's look at the next one. The next one is $180 in profits. And again, it's relative to 600. And in drawing our circle graph, what we want to do is we want to find the number of degrees, but this time relative to 360, because that's the number of degrees in the circle. And when we solve this proportion, we know we're going to get an answer of n equals 108 degrees. And so we draw our angle of 108 degrees, continuing from our 90 degree angle. So 108 would intersect the circle about there, and we draw our line, our radius, and this is going to be 108 degrees, and it is going to represent $180 in profits. And then finally, our last number, which is $270, we're going to set up the proportion that $270 is in the same relative position to 600 as the number of degrees that we need is to 360 degrees. Now we know that answer is going to be 162. So when we solve this proportion, we are going to get that n is equal to 162 degrees. And that turns out to be the rest of the circle. So when we put our protractor down, it turns out that 162 degrees would intersect the circle right here. So this is going to be 162 degrees, and that is going to represent $270 of profits. So the way you find the numbers, or the number of degrees, for a circle graph is to set up a proportion. The amount of the profit relative to the entire number of profits, or the entire amount of profits, and the number or the angle that you're looking for relative to 360. So you have the part of the profits relative to all of the profits, the part of the circle in degrees relative to the entire circle in degrees, and the answer that you get will be the answer that you place or draw on the circle graph.